Hey everybody, how's it going? I'm Matt and I'm back with a brand new product review video for everyone today. I've got a really exciting car, one I've been looking forward to for a little while now. This is the Rapido NSC Centerbeam Flatcar. I have two versions of this car. I have a BC Rail version in a nice green and the TTX in yellow. And these cars I have been eyeballing since St. Louis RPM last year, which I think was June or July. I got to see some of the prototypes in the Rapido booth, and I really liked what I saw. There's lots of really great little details on here and very accurate to the prototype. Depending on which road number you get, the car will look slightly different. There's for example, there's like some examples of this car have an open grid sort of Z pattern across the top center beam, which is really cool. I didn't get those, but it's a really cool looking pattern, but I really love the way these cars look. So these cars cost $59.95 or something like that retail, so right about 60 bucks, which is, it's pricey, but for these sort of what I've been calling end game freight cars, that's about the price that they're landing on these days. And these cars do have a ton of detail on them. Comparing them with prototype photographs, I don't really see anything missing. These cars have it all. All right, so what do these cars have exactly? Well, a Centerbeam flat car has a lot of fun details to them. I have a ton of Atlas flat cars on my layout already, and so to add these to the mix is really great as well. You'll see lots of this a lot of this stuff is molded into the plastic. We don't have a ton of separately applied details. Like a lot of this stuff on the side here is all kind of molded in, which is nice. It means that the car is pretty sturdy. So the car itself is going to hold up very nicely. It has nice looking end detail. Let me spin it around so you can see the brake wheel side of things. So yeah, I mean, everything you kind of want from end detail is here. You have your coupler cut lever, which looks very nice. You have air hoses, brake wheel, brake chain, all that is on here. All this end detail is very nice and appropriately sort of sized. Wire grab irons, which might be a little hard to see right now, but they are there and they're looking pretty good. One of the big things that these cars have are nice underbody detail. So if you take a look to the side here, let me get up, you can see how that brake line kind of goes down, and below this truck you can see kind of here where underneath, sorry about that, underneath you can see where the brake line kind of comes up to the truck right there and stops. But yeah, couplers themselves are the Rapido sort of metal proprietary couplers that Rapido comes with on all their cars. They are metal, they are a nice coupler. This you wouldn't need to upgrade immediately, unlike the Roar box car, which I showed in my last video, which I think you really need to pull that coupler off absolutely immediately. Rapido ones, they're nice, you can keep them around if you want. For my center beams, I am upgrading them all to long shank KD 154, 158. I can't remember the number on them exactly, but they're the long shank scale head couplers. And the reason why I'm doing that is because these are a longer car, and the longer shank on the coupler just kind of helps them out a little bit in corners, in curves, I should say, so that they don't kind of want to pull themselves off the track. These cars are very light for their size. The Rapido cars come in at 4.5 ounces, which is far too light. So when you run them with a load, you'll probably want to have a load that is weighted if you can. Now let's take a look at loads. I have a couple examples of Centerbeam flat car loads that we can kind of test out with this. This first example is the Walthers Centerbeam load, which everyone's probably very familiar with at this point. They were made by Walthers for their cars, but they work very well with the Atlas Centerbeams. And we'll do a comparison between the Atlas and the Rapido in a second here. But I wanted to test to see if these would work with the Rapido Centerbeams as well, because they are all 73 feet, so they should all work, assuming that these little notches here, these little, what do you call them, little holes and pegs don't interfere with the ribbing. You can see on my loads here, I have added some car weights to kind of weigh them down. I do like to make my cars as heavy as possible. So as we put the load in here, we can see that those pegs clear perfectly fine. And I'm not going to secure it in here all the way because it can be a pain in the butt. These Walters loads can be very difficult to remove, but they look perfectly great on the car. Those loads fit just fine, and they are perfectly awesome and reasonable to use. Just be careful with the Walters loads because they are difficult to get on and off. I've seen people use magnets. I plan on doing the magnet mod on mine as well to make that work. I'm going to try a second load here. These are loads made by a gentleman on Facebook goes by the name Columbus Trainmaster, which I love his loads very much. They are essentially a lightweight piece of wood with some paper over top. And he does some really nice Photoshop work to make the loads look like they're ripped, and some of the loads not having, wrapping over the boards and that kind of thing. But if we put these loads on here, they fit on beautifully as well. So if you're concerned that maybe your current loads won't work with these new cars, don't be, they work just fine. Okay. So pros are obviously the car looks beautiful. The car fits on my loads. It's got all the Rapido details and everything that you come to expect from Rapido. Great looking car. Cons for this car would be just with some of the underbody detail being a little, so okay, can we see right here? See how this is hanging pretty far down. It's actually going to, if I were to run this on my track over a derailleur or even maybe over a switch, that little piece of, I think it's even plastic, I don't think it's metal, the little hose detail that's hanging down is hanging down way too low. It's going to get caught, it's going to break. So that needs fixed. Probably need to just take some super glue and glue that end down a little bit lower right there, which would cause this to sort of reshape itself and stick it up a little closer to the underbody. That is one of the annoying things about highly detailed cars like this, is sometimes the details are a little tricky when it comes to how they're being applied in the factory, and you'll have to maybe do a little additional work yourself to make those work out. Okay, let's take a look at a comparison between the Atlas Centerbeam and the Rapido Centerbeam at this time. Both cars are representing two different types of center beams, both 73-foot center beams. One is the Atlas, I think, or the Rapido is built by NSC. The Atlas is built by Greenbrier, I think. At least that's what one of my friends says. But anyway, how do these two cars compare? Now, this one retails for $60, and this one retails for about $52. However, you can get these for much, much cheaper. We can get both of them for cheaper right now, certainly than retail. But depending on where you can go, the Atlas Centerbeams are significantly cheaper than the Rapido ones by as much as, say, $15, $20 cheaper. Are you getting a $15 or $20 cheaper car out of the Atlas one versus the Rapido one? Certainly the Rapido one is very, very lovely. The Atlas one, I think, is equally as lovely. I don't think that there is any real major difference between the two cars. Looking at them side by side, the major difference you see between the two is just that the Atlas Centerbeam is a little bit lighter in color, whereas the Rapido is a bit of a darker color yellow. Which one is more accurate to a fresh out of the factory paint scheme? Maybe this one. I don't know. The other thing that I might say would be a difference between the two is if you take a look at the end of the cars here, especially around the coupler cut levers, these are clearly made of metal, and so they are painted up and look very nice in comparison with the rest of the car. Whereas the Atlas car, I think these are molded yellow coupler cut levers and the brake chain as well. And so they kind of have like a lighter, kind of creamy, almost translucent quality to them because they are plastic. And it appears to me that to be the case that all the end details on the Rapido one kind of blend in with the car better than the Atlas one does. That being said, you're going to weather both of these up. You're not going to be able to tell a difference in that by the time you're done weathering. So that is not a major issue at all. Accuracy to the prototype between the two, I can't say for sure. I am not as well read when it comes to that kind of thing as some of my friends. Kyle, I'm sorry. But they both, looking at the pictures that I've seen, they both look very, very good in comparison with prototype pictures that I've seen here. I can't visibly tell a difference between this versus a prototype or that versus a prototype. And so I'd say accuracy wise, they're both pretty much equal. The Atlas car does not have the hanging down brake line here that the Rapido one has. And so you don't have the problem of clearance that the Rapido one has right there. You know, it maybe doesn't look quite as good from the underbody as the Rapido one does. But I would say it looks perfectly fine. I don't have an issue with it. And the other thing is the Atlas ones, you will want to replace the couplers. Atlas couplers are terrible, so you do need to consider that extra little bit of cost there in the Atlas car. The Atlas car is also a half an ounce lighter than the Rapido car. So the Rapido car is 4.5 ounces, which is too light, but the Atlas car is 4 ounces, which is even lighter still. So there is maybe that to factor in there as well. In all reality, you're going to want both. As I look, at least in my part of the country that I'm modeling, which is the Pacific Northwest, you see both of these cars. They're both extremely common. I would say maybe the Rapido NSC Centerbeam car is slightly more common than the Greenbrier car by Atlas. Maybe it's 50-50 depending on the day probably. I have like maybe 11 of these Atlas Centerbeams now, so I think from now on I'm going to be buying only Rapido Centerbeams to fill out the rest of my fleet. But that is only because I'm trying to, you know, get a good ratio of car types. I would be perfectly happy with either one of these cars on my layout. They're both fantastic. So yeah, that's that. So in conclusion, the Rapido NSC Centerbeam Flatcar. What do I think of it? I think it is a fantastic looking car. I think it is a great addition to your model railroad. Very few flaws, a whole lot of great details all around. And yeah, I do recommend it. Well, that is all for this video. Thank you everyone for stopping by and checking it out. And I will see everyone in another video.